of Fund Development at the Society of Women Engineers. On behalf of SWE, I welcome you to our plenary, How Does She Do It? We want to acknowledge and thank Genentech for their generous support and sponsorship of this plenary and give them an opportunity to say a few words about why they're at WE15 and support SWE. Please welcome Brittany Elko from Genentech.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our last day at WE15 this year. I'm sad to see the conference is coming to a close. I'm Brittany Elko. I've been a SWE member for 10 years, and this is actually my 10th SWE conference, so I feel like I'm definitely a veteran. I'm currently the Region A governor for SWE, which means I oversee our sections in Northern California, Nevada, and Hawaii, and I've also previously served on our SWE board of directors. I'm currently a clinical demand and supply leader for Genentech in our Pharma Technical Development Group. So I provide demand and supply planning for clinical trials all over the world, testing drugs in phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. These drugs are in very early stages of testing, and it's really exciting to work on these drugs and see the testing results come back and see drugs really improving patients' lives. Genentech focuses on creating therapies for unmet medical needs. Founded in 1976, we were the first company to produce a human protein in E. coli. Soon afterwards, Genentech was the first to synthesize insulin, and within a few short years, the company successfully demonstrated the viability of recombinant DNA. This was the true launch of biotechnology. More than 35 years later, our portfolio of treatments range from various cancer therapies, immunology, ophthalmology, and rheumatology, amongst others. I love working at Genentech because of the opportunities to really make an impact in people's lives, as well as the really strong network of women engineers and support we have for organizations like SWE. Our company purpose is doing now what patients need next. Every day I come to work because I know the drugs I'm supplying to patients can ultimately save their lives. We as Genentech are proud to sponsor SWE for what it stands for. As a CPC member, we support SWE's mission, and this year's conference theme, Reach Out to Reach Up, really resonates with us because we believe in investing in our employees. And coming to SWE and supporting plenaries like these is just one of those ways we like to do that. I'm really excited to hear from all of our amazing panelists about how they succeed in their life and career, and ultimately continue to make amazing connections through SWE and coming to another 10 years of conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Before I introduce today's moderator, I want to point out that questions to the panelists can be submitted via the WE15 app. There are instructions scrolling on the screen. If you can't use the app, we did put out some index cards, and you can write your question on there and raise your hand, and our volunteers will get them to the moderator. That said, I'd like to introduce today's moderator. Jenny Miller is a Senior Director, Avionics Programs Engineering for Rockwell Collins. She has been with Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for 19 years with increasing responsibilities. Now leading in an organization of more than 700 domestic engineers for hundreds more offshore, Miller has experimented with many techniques over the years to balance her responsibilities at work while simultaneously growing her family at home, including a working husband and 4 children under the age of 10. She has a passion for encouraging and helping others with the complexities that come from being a successful career woman, wife, mother, and friend. Please help me in welcoming Jenny.
Well, good morning. I am so excited to see this many females and people here today to listen to this plenary. I wasn't expecting this many people at 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday after a Friday night in Nashville. So this is great to see so many people, and I think it speaks to the importance of this topic. I actually heard your gasp. This happens all the time when people at work get to know me and they find out that I have 4 children, or people in my community that know me as a mom find out the responsibility I have at work. I hear the gasp, or I hear the, how do you do it? Or I hear the comment, I don't know how you do it. And all of these women here today to talk to us are gonna tell you more about how they do it. I've had a couple, about a half an hour to get to know some of them. They're amazing, they're inspiring. They've all had different experiences, they've made different decisions, and I think you're going to learn a lot from this discussion today. So with that, we're going to take a moment and have each of the panelists do a little bit more introduction that you'll beyond what's in their bio, and then we're going to start with a couple questions that I have, and then I'll be accepting questions from all of you. And so just a little bit more about myself. I have an electrical engineering degree from Purdue. Do we have any Purdue? Whoa, that's awesome. So I have an electrical engineering degree from Purdue. I have a master's in systems engineering from Iowa State, and then an MBA from the University of Iowa. So again, I've been at Rockwell 19 years. My children, I have 3 boys and then a girl who is our exclamation point at the end of our family. They're actually now 11, 9, 5, and 3, and my husband, as it said in my bio, he works at John Deere, and so every day is a interesting dynamic to try to figure out how to make it all work. And before I introduce everyone, I just wanted to say quick thanks to all of my coworkers who are here today supporting me in this discussion from Rockwell. And then I have friends and family and coworkers that are watching this either live or will be watching it afterwards, so thanks to all of them, because ultimately being able to make everything work requires a team, and it requires a support system. So Lori, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm Lori Cumming and excited to be here. I actually started my career at General Motors 41 years ago. When I started,
She started when she was 10, I think.
I started as a freshman at General Motors Institute, which is now Kettering University. Is there anyone from Kettering? Yay, yay! So I started as a freshman. At that time, we actually went 6 weeks to school and 6 weeks at work, so we did that for 5 years. When I started, all I knew is I loved math, and that's why I went into engineering. When I ended GMI, I also knew I loved cars and trucks. So I just loved the industry I was in. I had many career opportunities within engineering. At our proving grounds, I was in test and development and numerous design release jobs in our tech center, including releasing police cars and taxi cabs, which was really fun because you got to drive really fast. And then I had the opportunity to change careers, or change within my career, and actually go into manufacturing. So I worked with NUMMI at our plant in Fremont, California, where we had a joint venture with Toyota. Certainly learned a lot there. Came back from that assignment into other leadership assignments within engineering, and then had an incredible opportunity to go to MIT for a year as a Sloan Fellow and get my MBA. It's such a gift, the opportunity to have a year to focus on yourself, growing your skills, learning from amazing professors, and my classmates were from 30 different countries and 40 different companies, and the wealth of knowledge was incredible. I came back from that, was a chief engineer in numerous trucks and someone who loves cars and trucks. What an awesome job. Then we came to a global engineering organization, and I had the opportunity to have some global teams within engineering, quality, and now within our design organization. And I love the opportunity to develop global teams. So currently my job, we're responsible for great winning designs for our customers, and my team's responsible globally for delivering them on time with quality. So lots of fun, great career.
Thanks, Camille.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am Camille Chang Gilmore, and first I want to let you know that the Chang is not by accident. I am Jamaican Chinese. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, came to the United States at age 5, lived in New York, and then went on to go to school at Penn State University. Any Penn Staters in the house? Woo! There's always guaranteed at least one in a room of 100, I'm just saying. I went to Penn State, met my husband there. He played football for Joe Paterno. He was on the '86 National Championship team. I am a sorority girl. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Yes, HR folks can be sorority girls. And then I went on to do my MBA at the University of Illinois with my husband. I would not recommend that because you will kill each other. We almost did. After graduating and getting my MBA from the University of Illinois, I've worked for companies like Federal Express, IBM, Exxon. I was a chief labor negotiator for Exxon. I worked for the University of Illinois MBA program, to which I graduated from. I worked for Governor Ted Kulongoski for the state of Oregon. Yes, we lived in Oregon for 5 years. And then a company called Boston Scientific came to recruit me and said, you know, I don't know what you do for the governor, but here we save lives. And I've been with Boston Scientific for 11 years now in one of the most exciting positions I've had to date. And we have the ladies from Boston Scientific here supporting me, so thank you so much. And it's just been a phenomenal ride. I've been married now for 22 years. And guess what? My husband is an NFL agent. So how many of you seen Jerry Maguire? I live with that. That's him, real deal. They're not making it up when you see stuff like that. So, and I have two wonderful, amazing young boys. And one of the things, and I'll share with you as we go through this talk this morning, is they had challenges when they were age 4 and 5 in a diagnosis with Asperger's and autism. So I'll talk to you a little bit about how to deal with that as we have our conversation today. But I will tell you, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest women in the world. I get to work with wonderful, dynamic people. I'm blessed to have a family that really cares. And one of the people that joined me today who rode up with me, her name is Tay Dennis, and she's here with me today. It takes a village as she rode up with me to be here. So I look forward to the conversation and hand it back off to you.
All right, Lorraine.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lorraine Herger. I'm from IBM Research at Yorktown Heights, New York, and I'm currently the CIO of IBM Research, and that's a worldwide responsibility. We have 12 labs worldwide, including 2 on the continent of Africa now. And so that's allowed me to do a lot of traveling. I've been just about everywhere in the world because of that kind of responsibility. So having those opportunities does bring you a lot of opportunity to also engage with the world. I did want to mention that I am the president of SWE New York, which is the section that covers New York City and Long Island, and we're very active both professionally and with the students and in outreach. And that has been my personal mission over the years. I've participated in National Engineers Week, I think probably for the last 30 years, making it a point to always visit at least one school and figuring that if I touched one person each time, that was worthwhile. We've also developed a set of outreach activities between SWE and our work at IBM Research, where we've done a lot of hands-on with the Arduino platform, if you're familiar with that, teaching girls and boys how to put together hardware and how to program. So that has been, my personal mission in addition to my work over the years. And I'm also, I'm also the delegate from SWE to ABET. And ABET is the organization that accredits all engineering schools in the United States, actually globally now, which is very important because there are many companies that will not hire from a school that is not ABET accredited. And many companies also, if you look at the fine print, will not hire unless you're from an ABET accredited school. And I'm an electrical engineer, so I do computer engineering and electrical engineering. And I consider that activity to be a give back for everything that I've been blessed with in my life. So.
All right, thank you, Peggy.
Good morning. My name is Peggy McCullough. I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering from San Francisco State. Wow. Wow. Now I'm the only, once again, I'm the only one in the room. No, so I'm a senior vice president of Bechtel Group. Bechtel's yes, my amazing Bechtel colleagues here in the front. Bechtel is a global engineering construction firm. And in my 27 years with them, I've held many, many roles and had the opportunity to participate in the leadership of some pretty amazing projects. The Yucca Mountain project in Las Vegas, Nevada, which was the intended long-term geological repository for commercial spent fuel, the fissile material storage facility in Russia, Chernobyl in Ukraine, ICBM silo dismantlement in Ukraine, nuclear weapons security in Russia, and I built a coal mine in central Queensland, Australia. Currently, I'm the project director for the waste treatment plant. And there's some other, we call it WTP. There are some WTP colleagues here today. The waste treatment plant is a complex of facilities in eastern Washington that will process through vitrification, so immobilize by putting it into glass logs, nuclear waste that currently sits in 177 underground tanks, 56 million gallons of it. That waste was generated during the World War II weapons production and is the most voluminous and complex waste stream in the DOE complex. My husband, Pat, and I just celebrated 30 years of marriage, and we have 2 grown sons. So looking forward to the dialogue. I had the opportunity yesterday to sit in on the work and not to work, and there were so many great questions. That was a great panel, very, very engaged participation, and so I hope we have the same today, and because you have some ladies now who have been through it all, right, with grown kids. So.
Thank you.
Hi.
Cheryl, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm Cheryl McKinney. I have 30 years with BP. When I started in the refinery 30 years ago, there were 3 women that worked at the refinery. So it's been a journey. I'll be happy to say that it's a much different place now across BP, and we're working on a gender ambition to get to 25% of our senior level leaders and group leaders as female in the company, and it's an effort that I've been championing for a number of years. My kids are grown, and I get to see them when I am willing to pay for vacation, which is always as often as they can take work breaks these days. My husband and I live outside of Chicago, and you know, my fun fact, I spent a couple of years over in London at the corporate offices, and I had to make a choice about whether to move my family over there or not. My husband works, and he said, you know, I can't take a 2-year sabbatical while you go over to London. So I think I'll stay here in Chicago, and we spent 2 years kind of commuting back and forth between London and Chicago. So this living apart thing, I think some of folks in the workplace are dealing with off and on, and if you have any questions in that area, it was the right choice for me from a career perspective, but it wasn't the easiest thing I've ever done, I'll tell you that. The kids enjoyed it though, because Mom had a cool pad in London they could come visit, and they were in college, right? So that was a good thing. I'm going to keep it brief and turn it over to the next person.
Go ahead, Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Relation. I'm a supply chain manager currently at Pratt & Whitney. I started out at State University of New York at Buffalo, and I bet nobody here goes to, oh my goodness, wow, amazing. Absolutely incredible. So that's where I got my BS, and then I went to Virginia Tech for my master's, and then I spent some time at Cornell in a doctoral study. I worked at Allied Signal Engines, which is now Honeywell, in Phoenix, Arizona for about 6 years as a combustion and emissions engineer, so very, very technical. And then my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, told me, Heather, you really don't like this, and you've always wanted to go back for your MBA. So I did, and I went to Thunderbird University, which is now a part of ASU. It's located in Glendale, Arizona. It's an international business school, and it was a wonderful experience. And then I joined Pratt in 2005 with a 3-month-old son. So when you think that there's obstacles out there, I moved our entire family in 2 weeks with a 3-month-old son, 2 dogs, got our house on the market. I mean, you name it, I did it in 2 weeks. I can't even believe it. But I started out in the leadership development program and did a couple of rotations through military engines, marketing, found myself in program management where I absolutely loved it, and I was lucky enough to be the program manager for our product, which goes on the A330, and work very closely with Airbus and all of our customers, and then also manage our product which goes on the MD-80, MD-88, which if you've ever flown Delta up and down the coast, they run them up and down the coast like buses. It's been out there for a long time, and it's a great engine. And also the engine that goes on the Boeing 757, until I moved into supply chain, which was something completely new for me. out of my realm of understanding, and I've been there since January. So hopefully that will spark a couple of questions for you guys, and I think we can get started.
Yeah. So I am going to start with a question that I have, and then I'm already seeing a couple come in, so keep them coming. But I think many of you are familiar with Sheryl Sandberg, and she wrote a book called Lean In. Again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, where she writes about there are times that you should reach for new opportunities, even if you're unsure that you're ready to take them on, and her advice is to lean in. So I'm going to ask Lorraine first. Is this something that you've done in your career?
Yes, so I actually have a little bit of a different history in becoming an engineer. So I got a BA first in art history from Columbia University. And I graduated Phi Beta Kappa, magna cum laude, but then decided that I didn't really want to be that person. So I was actually married by then and decided I was going to go back and get a degree in electrical engineering. My husband was very supportive. Halfway through, my first son was born, but I finished up. But I got a lot of pushback, both from family, friends, like, what are you doing? Why don't you just, figure out what it is you're going to do and get it done and move on? But I was determined that this was what I wanted to do. So 9 months after my son was born, I carried him up to receive my electrical engineering degree at the University of Maryland. And then I went to work for IBM, and the rest is history, as we say.
All right, and I have a question for Camille. Do you believe that finding balance is a myth? Is it even possible?
Oh, it is a myth. There's no thing as balance. Okay, I'm just telling you. I'm gonna keep it real with all y'all. There is no balance. It's called integrating life into work. That's what it is. And I'll just tell you, my day starts. One thing I forgot to tell you: I live in Atlanta, and I live in Atlanta, but I support one of our biggest divisions that's in Minnesota. So every Monday, I wake up at 4 in the morning, and I take a flight at 7:30 to go to Minnesota, and then I come back on Thursday nights. The next week, because I have corporate responsibilities as the diversity officer for the company, I start that same routine, but I go to Boston, 7:30 a.m. flight from Atlanta to Boston, coming back on Thursdays. And people say, why do you do that? I do that because of my boys. In Atlanta, they are settled, they are comfortable, they are doing great, they're thriving. And one of the things that when the CEO and our SVP asked me to take on these responsibilities, I had some absolutes. And I was very clear that I would not move and that I could not move, but I was willing to sacrifice myself and make sure I was where I needed to be when I needed to be there. So part of my role also has global responsibilities, and I will tell you that my husband is just phenomenal. You have to find a husband or a partner that is willing to not only see your career, but also see theirs. So we have a rule that, I don't know if many of you know about the Cozy app. There's an app called Cozy, C-O-Z-I. And we have a rule that whoever gets it up on the calendar, if it's not on the calendar, then you got to handle it. So, so get it up there. If you have to travel outside the country and you didn't put it on the calendar, then you have to figure out who's going to, take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. The other dynamic that we have is not only do I have 2 boys, but my husband's mother is now has moved down from New York and has living in Georgia, and there's elderly care now issues starting to creep up. And my mother, we're making the decision to have her move from Maryland to Georgia as well, so that we can have a nucleus. But I'm here to tell you, if anyone tells you that there's balance, there's none. But there is order, and there's being organized. And in addition to Cozy, my husband, who's just wonderful, he'll send out the plan. He's always about the plan. What is the plan for the week? And he sends a text to all constituencies, all groups. That's the tutor. That's, who's Tay. I introduced Tay. She runs around with my mother-in-law and makes sure she gets to all her appointments. He sends it out to our cleaning lady, our lawn guy. This is the schedule. This is where everybody is going to be. This is what we need you to do, and let's make sure it's handled. So to that point, it's all about being organized and making sure you have a plan.
So, and I'll just add that my husband and I rarely fight. We just really get along great. But the only arguments we've ever had is around the calendar, and we too adopted Cozy, and now it's great because we can both access it. It's what made us break down and get our iPhones a couple years ago, and just having some organization's great. Now that actually leads me to a question, because Camille mentioned her husband and his support that came from the audience, and so I'm just going to open it up to the panelist that wants to jump in. But it said, this question is related to marriage and children. What qualities do you look for in your husband or partner in order to enable you to have children and a demanding career? So, somebody want to jump in on that one?
Well, yeah, I will. So when my husband and I married, he was an officer in the Marine Corps and intended to spend a career in the Marine Corps. And when I became pregnant with our first child, he was about to be transferred to Okinawa single status, and he made a choice to get out, which was pretty life-altering for him. And when Brendan was about 3, I was in our offices in 50 Beale in San Francisco on a Christmas Eve, working on a submission for that had to be postmarked to the Corps of Engineers by midnight on Christmas Eve. And about 8 o'clock that evening, I called home a little teary and said, I don't know when I'm going to be home. This proposal has to go in. This is the lifeblood of our company. And he said, Peg, Brendan is 3. Mission before men, Christmas will start when you get here.
I love that.
And so I think his willingness to work it, we work it all the time. I've moved him all over the country. I've ended several of his careers with my moves. And he, you just have to look for somebody who's really willing to be a partner. That's what it's about, You're a partner in this family unit. You're a partner in the 2 careers that are necessary to sustain your family, and that, I think that's what you look for. Somebody's willing to be a true partner.
I'm going to hop on, right? And so you've heard a lot of peachy stories. I would say mine wasn't as peachy, right? And it's good to kind of put that reality out there. So I got married when I was 20 years old, and I had my kids when I was 25. And I was a starting engineer working in the oil refinery, and everything was great. My husband and I actually met in high school, and we were married for 20 years. It ended in a divorce because he didn't know what he'd signed up for. And when my career started to take off, he felt like it took something away from him. And so it felt like I needed to make a choice between either my career or my marriage, and it was a difficult time for me. I think the choice that I made to end that marriage was the right one because it was getting very difficult at the end. And the thing that I was watching as that occurred was the reaction that my kids were having to it. Not only my daughter, who I was very interested in kind of her impact, but actually my son was the one that I was particularly interested in just understanding how he would receive it. Because in my mind, it wasn't a choice that I should have needed to make. And I think the thing for me was when I got married at 20, I was a different person than the person that I was at 30 or 35. And when I divorced at 40, that was a very different offer. And it wasn't that what my husband wanted or what I wanted was wrong. It was just that it wasn't a match anymore. So I was divorced for about 8 years, and I remarried. And the husband that I have now, which hopefully is the last one, is a much different picture. But it's because he knew what he was getting, right? So he knew who I was, and he accepted that person, right? So you can either grow together, which a lot of these ladies have demonstrated, or you can grow apart because what you want isn't exactly aligned. And what I was thinking about was making sure that second choice that I was making was a wise one, and that he was being very supportive of who I was as a person. So the example that I had when I went over to London, he flew over to London to see me, 18 times in the time that I was in London. And often at work, they would say, "What are you doing this weekend?" And he said, "Well, it's Thursday night, so I'm getting on an airplane to London." And he would get off the airplane on Friday, and he would work from my apartment in downtown London on Friday afternoon with the time zone switch. He got in about the time the office opened. He'd work until I got off work. We'd see London, tour around until Monday morning. He'd get back on the flight back to Chicago, and I'd go into the office in London on Monday morning. And that's how we lived for 2 years, right? And he was so, so supportive during that period of time. So pay attention, right? If you're feeling stress in this, it's a signal to tell you something, right? Don't go too quickly, and don't ignore kind of what your internal gut is telling you.
All right, Heather. Marissa Mayer is the CEO, as the CEO of Yahoo, made the very controversial decision to ban telecommuting. It was discussed a lot in the media. She was also criticized for taking a very short maternity leave and installing a nursery next to her office. So as a head female executive in Silicon Valley, do you think she was treated differently than her male counterparts for this decision? And in your experience, are there double standards in how women and men are treated? And do you have any advice as a result?
So none of you are going to like this answer, but it really depends. Because I have had extremely supportive bosses, and I have had bosses who have not been supportive. And it doesn't matter whether or not they have kids, or they're a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. My current boss, as a matter of fact, is extremely supportive of any work-life balance I need. He understands I might be conducting a meeting in the back of a car because I'm at lacrosse practice with one of my sons. He gets it that I might be on phone calls while I'm at swim practice, or I might have to work on the weekend, or I might have to leave in the middle of the day to go read a book to one of my younger sons at school. So he doesn't have any kids. But however, there are bosses that I've had who have children who haven't been understanding whatsoever about this flexibility. So my advice to you is, when you go out there and you look for a job, don't just look at the job. Don't just look at what you're going to be doing and what it might do for your career. Look at who is going to be your supervisor. Is he going to be supportive of your work-life balance? And you're going to know that by talking to the other people who work for him or her. And make sure that that boss is also willing to stick up for you. If you're not able to be at that meeting at 8 a.m. because you're getting your kid on the bus, but you can call in, is he going to stick up for you or her? And I just say that because I've primarily had male bosses. But that's my advice to you.
That's fantastic advice. Most of my coworkers know that there's a daily 7:30 with one of our customers right now, and they know that oftentimes I'm going to be calling in for it, and that's okay. You have the conversation, and they support you. So, Lori, I have a question for you. Do you have any kind of blueprint that you've worked to in developing your career and trying to find the right balance between your family and your life and work?
Well, I'd say, I'm not sure I would call this a blueprint, but I did have 4 pieces of advice that I've tried to be true to through my entire career. The first was to make sure I follow what I love, the passion. You heard I started out by loving math, then I loved cars and trucks. When I didn't mention, when I worked at NUMMI, I really get a passion about continuous improvement. I think it's the engineer in me, but I like to make everything better tomorrow than it was today. And then I've had the opportunity to grow global teams and be passionate about that. So I think the number one thing in every career move I've had is to understand that I love what I do and have a passion around it. The second is to always be growing. Every day, try and grow my skills and talents. I had the opportunity to have a year to do that, but it doesn't mean that, and by the way, if you ever have that opportunity, take it, it's awesome. But it doesn't mean that. I mean, I'm gonna learn today from the women that are sitting up here and from the questions that get asked in the audience, but every day, understand your strengths and how to make them stronger. The third is take on new challenges and opportunities. And I think maybe a specific blueprint might stop you from doing that, but I'd look at new spots. I'd have to say my career changed when I took the manufacturing assignment at NUMMI. I was on a path to be everything in engineering between our proving grounds and our tech center, and this was completely different assignment. But I'd say it just grew my confidence. It grew the relationships I had in my company. It just made me ready for the next leadership assignments. And then the fourth, and I probably should have put this first, I'd say do the job you're doing today really, really well. Because if you have personal excellence, people want you for the next job. And so whenever a young person comes in and asks me for advice on their career, I really want to start them with, how is your current assignment? What are you doing? How are you excelling? Because then, if you have that reputation, your career will be easy to navigate. So it's not exactly a blueprint, but that's what
I think it's great advice. So I'm starting to get a lot of questions from the audience, and these are fantastic. So we're going to start working through some of these. The first one is, when there's been a time in your life when you're having overwhelming challenges in your personal life or struggles, how have you managed to keep yourself together at work and manage your emotions at work? Have you kept them separate? Have you integrated them? How have you managed a crisis at home? Somebody want? And Camille, I think, alluded to this earlier.
Yeah, I can take on that one. So it was February of 2014 when I was being offered the opportunity to be the Vice President of Human Resources for Interventional Cardiology and the Global Chief Diversity Officer. Unfortunately, my husband was sitting in a hospital with a pulmonary embolism. I don't know if many of you know this, but it's not good. That ain't good. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm not gonna take the opportunity. I'm gonna wait until you get out the hospital, and I'll just let this one go. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you crazy?" He's like, "Look, I'm not going anywhere until you come back, okay? I promise." I said, "Okay, you promise?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You got to go get this. Go get this." And I did. And one of the things I will tell you, there will never be the perfect time. As a matter of fact, there was another moment where, when I was even being promoted to director, where where I was talking to my mother and I said, "Mom, I'm about to speak to some women about, doing it all." And she goes, "Well, yeah, you've kind of done it all. Your brother passed away. You then had to help bury your brother. Then you had to help with his newborn son. You then were moving on top of that. And then remember, during the move, you had a flood in the house." And I was like, I said, "You know what, you're so right." And I said, "Well, so what did I do?" She goes, she said, "Well, you kept your cool and you just kept going." And you know what, there comes a point where things are gonna happen. There's never gonna be a perfect time for anything. And the one thing that I do recognize that I do is I do try and get my uplift from somewhere. So I listen to motivational things. Each year with my team, I create themes so that we can rely back on. Like there was one year, expect amazing. This year it's make the magic happen. On my way into Maple Grove, when I land in Minnesota from Atlanta, I'm in my rental car and I'm jamming to whatever inspirational music I can find, whether it's gospel, whether it's some pop rock thing or anything that can just get me moving. And I realized that it's important to get that kind of energy. I also have 4 girlfriends. We text each other every day. And they are in some high impact jobs. One's a CFO, one's a regional manager, one is a CIO. I mean, and one of the things that we have committed to is to just touch base with each other once a day. "Hey, how you doing?" Or we'll send stuff, "Hey diva, did you kill it today?" Little things like that. Just so that we can kind of make sure that we're okay. And then you get that one girlfriend that goes silent. Something's up. She just goes silent. And that's our cue to then jump in and find what's going on. How can we help? What's going on? Do you need anything? And so I would say if one, there's never a perfect time for anything. And 2, if you can get those little nuggets of inspiration. I now have a theme, and that's stayed with me and my team knows. I'm not gonna let anyone steal my joy. I wake up with a certain amount of joy every day, and I'm not going to bed without it.
I have a little bit something to add, and very different than that. But when I had my son, my first child, I went back to work relatively fast, and I was on my first business trip. So I'm in Arizona. I'm a development engineer for HVAC. It's hot. I'm in the middle of Arizona. And my son, who is now 6 months old, or maybe he's 4 months old, he's in Michigan, and I was miserable, totally miserable. And I kept thinking, my son's not going to know who I am. And, you know, I got myself feeling bad. So this was such a specific moment to me. I sat in my motel room and I said, okay, Laura, you make a choice. Once you make a choice, believe in it. You know, believe that you can work and have your son, and you can, and now when I look at my 32-year-old son, I think it's almost hysterical that I thought that, but I made a choice to be present. Wherever I was, that's where I was present. So when I'm home, that's where I pay attention. I pay attention to my kids. When I'm at work, I pay attention to work. And so after that moment, it was just a different story. But I had to make a conscious decision, or I would have walked in every day emotionally, draining myself and not being good in either location.
So I think that actually leads into a question. I've seen a couple questions here that all use a dreaded word, which is guilt. I think guilt is one of the toughest words when you start talking about having a career and balancing, and it can be your own worst enemy. So the specific question is, do you ever feel guilty about taking time for yourself, and how do you deal with these feelings? So I think I'll open it up if anybody particularly wants to jump in on guilt.
Okay, I can answer that.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
So I think that you're almost bound to feel that from time to time. Now, I think in this era of 2015, all of you younger ladies beginning your careers don't quite have the same constraints that we did, those of us who came, say, 25 or 30 years ago, when really people felt they could come up to you and say, why are you here? You have, you know, a baby at home, or something like that. I think the workplace has gotten a little bit better. But on that count, I think whenever, I love the idea about the joy, but I do think that when you leave your children behind, particularly when they're young, or your husband is left alone with the children, or you have sick relatives, you're bound to feel that. But again, I think the idea that you try to be present where you are, do the best you can, and then move on. But I don't think it comes without a price, because I know myself, I love to hear you have all these friends, but I think some of the things that you give up are, for instance, you give up maybe having a lot of friends or having a lot of extracurricular kind of activities that you might do in your own life, because you really do have to focus on your job and potentially your family. And sometimes other things fall away, so that's how you limit the guilt, by focusing maybe on those few things that you can do, because I personally don't think you can, you know, do everything that you want to do. You have to, maybe at different stages in your life, you do different things. So as I've gotten older and my family has grown up, that's why I've devoted more of my time to giving back to my profession and giving back to younger people. But I really couldn't have done that 20 years ago.
Cheryl, were you going to add something?
I was going to jump in there too. So I would say my career trajectory was slower than a number of the folks in the organization that have reached the level of vice president that I've reached. And it was a choice for me. So when I was younger, I actually wanted to be more involved with my kids, and I made those choices. And my career suffered at the time, or I thought it had suffered at the time, because I wasn't getting the promotion on the every 3-year, you know, track that others around me were seeing. I was, you know, secretary of the Boy Scout troop. I was Girl Scout troop leader for like 10 years for my daughter. I was very involved with what the kids were doing, and that was the choice I was making. What I realized afterwards is I actually understand more about the refining business than most of my peers today, because I actually spent more time in technical and commercial roles in refining than the folks that came in and did the job for a few years and moved on. When my kids were older and it was time for me to, you know, think about my career, and I, you know, was looking at the options very differently, I hadn't appreciated the value that was created by me being slower at the start of my career. And I moved very quickly once I was willing to take roles outside of the refinery and get some experience in corporate America. And it was, I think that I'm in the position that I am today because of that depth of experience that I gained earlier, and it was more with good luck than it was with good planning, right? So I, pass that nugget along. Those choices that you make, they do have a benefit. The thing that I didn't see at the time was that things would change, the kids would grow up. Right? And I would be willing to do things differently when I was 40 than when I was 30, right? And so you don't see that as you're looking forward. In hindsight, the mirror is very good. The other thing from a family perspective, my mother hated the fact that I didn't live in the town where they all lived. I come from Ohio, went to University of Akron, I missed that earlier. See, I knew there was a couple in the audience. Anyway, and so I'm the black sheep of the family because I have 3 sisters and they all live within a 20-mile radius. So Mom came over to London to visit me when I was over there, and we spent 2 weeks touring kind of England and everything. And she said, I finally figured out that for you to do what you want to do, you couldn't be near me. And it took her that long to actually figure that out, right? And she said, I wouldn't want it any different than that. And so, it's not just your kids and your husband or partner that you're dealing with. The family and their assumptions on that also influences you. And I know I was always feeling like I wasn't in the right place. Either I was supposed to be doing something for work or I was supposed to be doing something for home. Give yourself some peace in that. Make the choices that are right for you, and it'll come along.
So one of the questions, several questions are coming in around how do you have a discussion with your supervisor about a flexible work schedule, whether it's work from home or flex hours or telecommuting. How do you get their support? How do you ask the question? How do you get it to be something, especially if maybe you're one of the few people that's doing it and your coworkers are not? So if any of you had that situation where you've had to ask or have that conversation with your leader?
I'll jump in.
Sure.
Because I have to do that all the time. My kids are young, and that's one thing I didn't mention. So I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. There are 2 boys. And quite frankly, it's just a requirement for my job these days. I am old enough, I have enough experience that, I just go in, I know what I want, I know what I can do, I know how I perform. So it's a little bit of a different circumstance for me because, I walk in with that expectation. I can get my job done no matter where I am and when I do it. And that's my requirement, is are you okay with that? Because I may not always be here, but know that I'm getting my work done, and I will always get my work done. So for you, as if some of you are younger, just going out into the workforce, you need to broach that conversation in advance. I think that what you can do is just put it that way. Say, look, here's the situation. You don't have to go into a lot of details, and I don't think that it's necessary. Just say simply that. I need to have a flexible work arrangement. I will get my job done. If there's ever any problems, I want you to come see me immediately because I don't want it to go on any longer. And that's, I think, where a lot of people run into problems is, a quarter later or half of the year through, you don't receive any feedback, and then all of a sudden at the end of the year, well, I feel like you weren't here enough. Well, you need to have that open dialogue. So really have that open dialogue with your supervisor. Say, are you still okay with me coming in at 9 o'clock and leaving at 5 and then logging in at night, or whatever it is that you need to do in order to accomplish your work?
Yeah, because I agree, there's no need to hide it.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
We've formalized that at BP, so it's a contract between you and your supervisor, and you review it twice a year, right? And it's just to get around that because there was an assumption that everything was okay, and then at the end of the year there was a breakdown in the communication. Not all managers and supervisors are good at giving you feedback, right? So it's up to you to seek that feedback.
And we have the formalized program at Pratt as well. But you really, really need to communicate very well. Yeah. And
I found in my own career, and I think a little bit it's just confidence, that early on I was not willing to have the conversation. I was afraid. I wouldn't say I hid it, but I just preferred not to discuss it and try to make it not be a topic. And then as I've grown through my career and I've realized I'm not the only one that has constraints with daycare and leaving for a soccer game. Everybody does, and my male counterparts do too. I got more comfortable just talking about it. And I think that's basically what everybody's recommending is have the conversation. There's nothing that you should be afraid of, to just have the conversation. Peggy, I have a question for you. So what's the most challenging circumstance you have ever encountered in managing your work-family balance?
It's probably two circumstances. Both had to do with separation. So when my younger son was 3, older son was 10, I became a project manager for a project just outside of Moscow. And I began traveling long periods to the former Soviet Union. And there were times where I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave my kids. And again, a few teary days where my partner, he bucked me up and said, "It's going to be fine. It is just going to be fine." On the back end, I would return home. I was so thrilled to be back with my family. And then I would look around the house, and it was like squirrels had been living there the entire time I was gone. And I'm like, this is not working, because I come home from 4 weeks in Russia, and I spend the first 3 days getting this house back in order, and this is not in. And my husband was always very resistant to get a nanny or a housekeeper, largely because of the expense, And I just said, we've got to do it, because I'm in such a bad mood for 3 days after and so we did. We found a wonderful woman who became like a part of our family. It was the best money we ever spent. Yeah. The second circumstance, in 2013, as my younger son was headed into his last year of high school, I went to Brisbane, Australia, to build the coal mine that I mentioned. And I had been in a corporate position where I was traveling a lot, and my husband and I just said, what's the big deal? I'm on the road all the time anyway. Well, it was a big deal, because it's a 14-hour time difference, and I vastly underestimated how homesick I was going to be for my family, vastly. And thank God for Skype. It was a complete lifesaver, but somebody had bedhead on the other end because of the 14-hour time difference, right? And the coping mechanism there was there was a large expat community, and so when I was working 7 days a week, and when I wasn't working, if I was invited socially, I went. I didn't allow myself to sit in my apartment and feel sorry for myself, and I also recognized it was important to always have the next time I was going to be with my husband and my kids defined, so that I had that to look forward to, not just sort of open-ended, when are we going to be together again. So, and both of those circumstances, it was the right decision. My boys are fine young men, and they don't harbor any ill will about me not being around. And the circumstance for our younger son, he was in a great circumstance. Good grades, the right set of friends who weren't doing anything bad. And in high school years, when it's going well, you don't want to mess with it, right? It's so.
Yeah, and I have personally been fortunate to, a lot of the women here are talking about traveling and the guilt and figuring out how to be away from your kids and worrying about, do they miss you and are you impacting them? And I have had the opportunity to travel all over the world with my career, and I have to say that it actually has been a blessing for my family. The kids are getting exposed to countries and cultures and languages and things. We will YouTube or look at where's mom going, where in the world is that? Bring things back. We have conversations at our house that we wouldn't have if I didn't take some of those trips. And I think we appreciate each other a lot when I get home. And I've heard Skype. I got a text last night from my husband. They were carving pumpkins, and it was great to see it. And I'm not carving the pumpkin, but they're having a great time. And when we get home, we'll do the next thing together. So there is a way to do it. And I think and many times the kids benefit by seeing their mothers do these things, and they're proud of you, and it's just a benefit for the whole family. So, which along those lines, there's a question here. I'm really curious because I've never experienced this. Have you ever taken your children on a work trip with you?
I have.
Camille has.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I did or learned early, especially when I'm doing travel outside the U.S., so that they don't think that they're missing something or missing out on something, we've agreed that the first trip abroad, they'll come with me so that they can experience it with their dad. And then, so when I have to go back, they're like, oh, we've been there already. And it actually works. It's actually worked really well. And it gives them an opportunity to be exposed to some of the things so that when I even come back from a second or third trip, I go, yeah, I went this place and that place. And they're like, oh, great. So, but this way they don't miss anything.
So this is a great question, and this is not one I've seen before, so I think this is very sensitive. My mother was a high-powered professional my whole childhood, go mom. But as a result, we don't have a close relationship. Only now we're beginning to get to know each other. So how do you connect with your kids no matter their age?
I can take that one too.
Go ahead, Camille.
Okay. So my mom, my dad died my freshman year at Penn State, and so my mother had to work 3 jobs. She's a nurse, so people say, how can she work 3 jobs? Well, let me just tell you. She worked Monday through Friday, one hospital, 7 to 3, another hospital, 3 to 11, and then Saturday and Sunday was another hospital. So my mother was rarely around, but when she was extremely present. So people often say, you probably get your drive from her because you watched her. I mean, there was nothing that bothered her, or if it did, she never showed it to us, and we just kind of handled it. And so, you know, one of the things I can tell you is that we didn't have a close relationship until after I had my first son. And it wasn't until I realized, wow, I missed out a little bit on my mom, on some of that closeness. And some of it could have been, well, you know, your dad passed away and I was just kind of trying to truck along. But we are closer now than we've ever been. And I think one of the things that I've really learned from her is strength. You know, she's one of the strongest women I know. To raise 4 kids, your husband just died, and you figured it out, and 2 of them went on to get master's degrees and a law degree, and you have 2 other sons who are entrepreneurs. It's just phenomenal. And so, you know, I would say that, you know, yes, there was a period of time where we probably weren't as close, but as I've matured and I even go through life and see where I want to be and where I want to be present, she's taught me a few things that you need to kind of grab into inner strength. You need to do what you need to do to get things done. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you shouldn't have too much guilt, right? Because you're trying to provide for your family, you're trying to ensure that they are successful as well. So that's kind of my story.
Lori, yeah.
When I started early in my career, someone gave me a piece of advice that I use every day of my life. And it's, in life, you will be juggling a lot of balls. The most important thing is to know which ones are crystal. And so for me, it was important to understand which of those things I was juggling were crystal to my children. So it wasn't being in every school event, or it wasn't being at every, you know, dinner, etc. But I found for my children who love sports, it was being at their sports games. So on my calendar, a crystal ball was their sporting events. That was all I needed to do, as far as, you know, not all I needed to do, obviously, but it was a matter of understanding. And then once I understood their crystal balls, then we had that relationship that you want. And I have to say, I do that every day. As a matter of fact, when people leave my office, lots of times the last thing they'll say is, now what's my crystal ball? Because, you know, we all have a lot to do. I think the key is to focus on that.
I told you these ladies are inspiring. I'm curious, does anybody have any programs at their work, or have you created a program where you enable working moms who have had a child to integrate back into the company in a way that's supportive and helps with that transition? Does anybody have any special programs to that effect? Part-time.
Well, I'm sure probably most of the large companies have, you know, flex time opportunities. I know throughout my career, I've had individuals work for me where my engineering business manager was actually 2 people. And so they job sharing. And so we have a number of those type of programs.
And I think actually maybe the reason we all were quiet was it's just becoming more normal that we personalize those to the situation of the individual, right? We don't need a special program per se.
Exactly.
So I think IBM has become a company where things like flex time, making your schedule, working outside the office is really just a part of the culture. And it's very acceptable to do that because so many people do it. So, and IBM has an excellent maternity/paternity leave arrangement. So if you were to have a baby, you get 6 weeks paid, and then another 6 weeks that you can use. Even this is either for men or women, of paid leave over the course of the next year. So you can use it for, if your kids are sick or you have some obligation. Also very flexible about leave of absence. So we have a lot of women in particular who may come back to work and then say, look, I think I need 6 months with my baby or whatever. And that's perfectly acceptable to them. We're very, very attentive to that and really try to then integrate people back in where they left. So I think that is becoming much more prevalent over the last, say, 10 or 15 years.
And
where I
I'll
think-
say that the most important thing for you to do is when you are pregnant and before you go out on maternity leave, set expectations with your supervisor for what you expect when you come back. Because I have heard of a couple of circumstances where women have come back and all of a sudden they come back to, even though it is their current position, all of their responsibilities have been taken away. Make sure you put together a very, very clear plan with your supervisor such that when you come back, when you leave, you're transitioning your major tasks and projects to someone else, but so that when you come back, you can transition them back to you. And if it's a project that's going to complete while you're out on maternity leave, make sure that there's something set up for you when you come back. Have that dialogue with him or her even while you're out on maternity leave. Is this project coming to fruition? Am I going to be leading this one? Because I do find that often a supervisor really gets wrapped up in, oh my God, how am I going to cover because Heather's not going to be there. And then there's no plan for when you come back to work and you come back to a job that really wasn't what you left. So that's my advice.
I did get the 5-minute warning 2 minutes ago, so I'm gonna ask another question here, maybe Peggy or Cheryl. How do you find time to take care of yourself? Where do you work in time for you?
I don't do a very good job of it. I should be going to the gym more. I'm a person I've been on a weight roller coaster my entire life. I have everything from size 6 to 16 in my closet. I don't prioritize it as well as I should. I mean, I should be looking after my health, right? But I would also say that I have struggled with reprogramming myself. Okay, so when my sons were at home, and if I was at home, I made dinner every night, and we had a family dinner. Well, now my sons are grown and gone, and I'm still making dinner every night. And I say to myself, I don't have to do that. Pat can make dinner, but it's my own programming trying to change after years of, taking care of first what I needed to, and that's an area where I can definitely improve.
Yeah. I would say try not to lose who you are, right? And try to rediscover who you are.
Yes.
Don't pay attention to others so much that you lose track of what it is you like to do. I am an avid book reader. I bet from the time I could learn to read until I graduated college, I don't know, 20,000 books, I don't know. It was like, that was the big laugh at the family. I think that from the time my kids were born until I was 40, I might have read 2 books, right? And I missed that. But I always felt like I was taking time away from somebody else. So I love my Kindle. It's great. And I've just gone, you know what? That's who I am. That's what I like to do. And I'm not going to be making excuses about spending time for me. Golf is my new love in my older age because I don't like to exercise, right? I don't mind diet, I don't like exercise. So golf is about the thing that, I can not get a cart and walk the golf course, and my Fitbit is my friend, right? So I do track my steps. But those are choices that you make, and if I wanted to do exercise, if it needed to be a priority, I would make it a priority. The fact that I don't make time for it really means I'm not prioritizing it, right? So you're in control of that. Just don't lose you in this conversation.
So just really quickly, because I know we're really short on time, but what you need to do is you might need to realign your expectations. I used to go on jogs for over an hour because I'm an endurance person, I'm not a fast person. I can't do that anymore. So what do I do now? I've got some weights in my basement, and I do a lot of strength-based exercises that involve like big body movements. I get it done fast in 20 minutes, and by the end of it, I'm panting, I'm sweating. I make that a priority for myself because if I feel physically fit, my mind is more focused and I feel great. I'm also, I love to ski during the winter time, and if I'm not at a swim meet with my kids all day long on a Saturday or a Sunday, I'm on the slopes. And you know what, in the wintertime, I am just not working on the weekend. It's just, I've got to get it all done during the week, which means I'm on the computer every night. So obviously, every 4 weeks I get my hair colored. No, this is not natural. So I make that a priority for myself. You have to do things. If you don't feel good about you, if you don't feel good about you, then you're not going to be as effective at work. Whatever it is that you need to do for yourself, you might have to modify it a little bit, not go for the long runs, do the 20-minute quick, but just make sure you get in some time for yourself, because you will be a better mom, you'll be a better wife or a better husband for the men out there, and you'll be a better employee if you do that for yourself.
Yeah. For me, it's nails. I'm a nail junkie, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you all. I want to thank our moderator, Jenny, and all of our panelists. Give them a big round. I think they did fantastic. We also want to thank our generous sponsor, Genentech, for supporting this event, and enjoy your last day at WE15. Thank you.